especially in the 80s and 90s, we didn't say you killed it. You rocked it. You flipped that. You murked that. You smashed that. Not you killed that. That didn't come in until later. And I'm always wondering how we got to that point where, you murdered that. Why would I want to murder the music? Why would I want to kill the beat? That's what gives life to the entire, the entire culture that I represent.
Stay tuned, stay curious. Enculturation podcast. Welcome to the show. You've come a long way to be out here with me in the boonies, with the cows and the hills, especially as a New Yorker. So thank you so much for coming on the West Coast, and not only that, but making it all the way out here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and to anyone who has been living under a rock and doesn't know who VooDoo Stretch is, in so many words, he is one of, or the first choreographer of hip-hop. He's from the crew Elite Force and also Mop Top Family. Boogie's finest MC, DJ, writer, dancer, and choreographer.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, welcome to the show. So, not sure if you remember me when I went to the first 36 Chambers, but I was there for the very first one, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. I still have my red jersey too. Yeah.
That's what's up.
Yeah. So, you've been doing 36 Chambers every year after that, right? How's that been going?
It's been great. This year was probably the best year thus far, with the exception of the first year. But it's been nice. We were happy to bring it back 2021, and then 2022 we tried to do a bit better, and we are trying to perfect it now, 2023 going into 2024. Just trying to expand and keep the focus on the art and the culture, it's not about us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what would be you say the long-term goal for 36 Chambers?
The long-term goal is just to really get people to understand the art of the dance and the culture, not just, most look at or enter their entrance into the cultures from battling, or YouTube. We're trying to get them to understand that the most important part of the culture and the art is the sharing, the communication part between people, to dance with each other, not just at each other.
Yeah, a good point. So just to establish a baseline, when you say culture, what does that encompass?
Well, when I say culture, I mean street dance culture. I'm talking about hip-hop culture. I'm talking about house culture. I'm talking about whacking culture or popping culture. They're all intertwined in the umbrella of street dance. And it's the main focus from my point of view is dance in general, street dance in particular, is the original social network. And I want people to understand that, and to feel that and to live that, and it will make not only your dance and your appreciation of the dance and the music and the culture, but you'll appreciate social media differently. You'll look at it differently.
Yeah. When EJ was on here, he said similar things where people are focused on the athletics part, but not the artistic part, right?
Right.
So what's been your experience getting someone to understand that there is a difference, and how do you sway one side or the other?
Well, the difference is anyone can be athletic, but expression of art, is a particular talent. It's a particular mindset. So, there's nothing wrong with the athleticism, but that's not the focal point. The focal point should be communication through music. And then the athleticism, is a part of that, but it's not the whole.
What trend would you say that we're in right now, as far as, because for example, musically, I never thought there would be a day where mumble rap is really popular, right? So I don't really understand it, but it's very trendy right now,
Yeah, I mean, listen, we got through dubstep. I'm not surprised with mumble rap. So I think it's all cool. It has its time, and as with all things, there's some good parts and there's some bad parts. I just think that, with the advent of social media, and especially now with the video aspect of social media like TikTok and IG and stuff like that, the communication is, at an all-time high, but the understanding is at an all-time low. I mean, people aren't really using these platforms and tools to learn, at or to grow, as, and from my perspective, as well as they could.
Okay, so how could someone properly use these platforms, and what do you think is causing the low rate of learning?
Well, people they want instantaneous gratification, and that's what comes from having so much information without having to actually work to get it. Google is such a great tool, but it's also a misleading tool, because you'll Google something and you'll think that's it, that's the answer, but you won't go any deeper, because Google is giving you different things. Not all of it is true. Not all of it. You have to fact check some stuff.
Have you heard of ChatGPT?
Yes.
Okay, so speaking of fact checking stuff, I've been using ChatGPT more just for my own curiosity, my own understanding of like what is it capable of and who does it apply to, right? So, for example, when I look up my name, nothing really comes up. When I look up your name, like the appropriate stuff comes up, right? Which some of it makes sense, but for some reason, ChatGPT said you passed away in 2020.
See? See? Attention, Chat GPT users. I'm still out here. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, because ChatGPT was like, yeah, Buddha Stretch, hip hop, yada, 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 right? Unfortunately, he passed away in 2020. I was like, wait, what the?
Whoever put in that information, the great Don Campbell passed away in 2020. The great Shabadoo passed away in 2020. The great Tyrone Proctor passed away in 2020. Buddha Stretch is still here.
He's still alive.
So that's what I mean. Like, people will run with what they see. The first line that they get, that's fact. And it's not. You have to dig deeper.
Yeah, I also wonder if these AI models are able to understand slang. So, like, say for example, someone's like, "Oh yeah, I killed it," and then ChatGPT is like, "Oh, this person just killed something," and then therefore is.
And I'm an advocate completely against that slang in particular. Like, for me, we've been preconditioned with this murder mentality of you have to kill something for it to be good. In the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, no one was saying, yo, you killed that.
So if no one was saying it, like, how did it come up?
I have no idea. But especially in the 80s and 90s, we didn't say you killed it. You rocked it. You flipped that. You murked that. You smashed that. Not you killed that. That didn't come in until later. And I'm always wondering how we got to that point where, you murdered that. Why would I want to murder the music? Why would I want to kill the beat? That's what gives life to the entire, the entire culture that I represent.
You brought up a good point. Just energy wise, because I've noticed in myself, and also like being around certain other dancers, there's a complete vibe shift when their presence or their dancing livens everything up and causes people to open up and like be more energetic, versus like, okay, this person is dancing in a way where I don't feel comfortable dancing anymore.
Exactly. Like, that whole mentality is a downshift in the energy. And for me, I've been advocating even to myself, to catch myself, like, telling someone that they killed something, because I'm like, why do you want to kill something? Why do you have, like, that's backwards. For me, the culture represents life. Why would you want to kill it? So I catch myself trying not to use that slang and trying to get other people to understand, like, we want to big something up. You're not bigging something up by telling someone to kill what you're bigging up.
Yeah.
We're not hunters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great point. So I guess my next question would be, what are some elements or qualities of the culture that you think either needs to be preserved or needs to be discarded or has been forgotten?
The communal aspect of the culture needs to be preserved, needs to be pushed. And by communal aspect, I'm being specific about people learning how to party.
Okay.
Most of the people that come into hip hop and house dance and, street dance in particular culture, again, they're coming from a battle mentality, but they've never learned to dance with each other. They're so used to dancing at each other. And, if you enter into a party and you hear some music you like and someone wants to dance with you, you're not going to start battling them. If a lady asks you to dance, you're going to start doing windmills and headspins. Like, no.
I agree with you, but I have seen when someone says yes, and it's pretty funny to observe.
Yeah, I've seen it too. It's absolutely hilarious, but it's sad because the reason that's happening, because they don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you want to dance with me? Ooh, Fresno. And now I'm tutting. And I'm like, bruh. Years ago, we were at an event called IBE. And myself and my partner Link were laughing. And we had to run up on these guys. The DJ played Sexual Healing by Marvin Gaye. And they were going off popping to Sexual Healing. And we're like, guys, this is not for that. This song is not for popping. You shouldn't be popping. You shouldn't be breaking. You should be looking for someone to share sexual healing with and understanding what that actually means. It doesn't mean do the Fresno.
There was a time in my life when I listened to more instrumentals, right? And then as I got older and I gained more life experience, like the lyrics in the song became like more meaningful. It's like, oh, this is why people sing that song. You know?
That's why there's lyrics because the artist is trying to tell you something outside of just the music.
Yeah,
the music has the backbone of the story, but the lyrics give you the details.
So you mentioned the communal part and the social. Which I think could be interpreted in many ways. So, like, what are some ways that communal or social aspects can look like? Is it the type of mentality you bring up, or is it like going to a certain event, or is it like
all of the above? But going with the mindset of being open to communicating with people without saying a word.
Okay,
dance is nonverbal communication, and if you know how to dance, you can go anywhere on earth and have a conversation without saying a word. That's the communal part that I'm referring to. I learned that from traveling, and meeting people who didn't speak English, and I don't speak their language, but we can have a long-term conversation through music.
Have you noticed any particular observations? Dancing or connecting in one country or one place from next to the next?
I mean, each place has their...
Because the reason why I ask is from the house side, at least, there's a lot of like advice saying, oh yeah, just go to the club, right? But that advice makes sense if there's a club that's appropriate to go to, So someone who's far removed from those places, as you mentioned earlier, you're in the mountains at one point. They can't just go to the club. Their club might be like
most places don't even have clubs anymore, and if they do, there's no dancing.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
drinking,
exactly.
Smoking, and drug use.
Yeah, so like, how can someone even recognize like I'm in the right place? Like, what does that look like?
Well, what I try to explain to people is you have to create that place.
Okay.
Big props to my brother, R.I.P. VooDoo Ray. Early on when we were going to the clubs, if there was clubs that we couldn't get into, my boy Ray would create a club. He would rent a studio. He would cover all the windows. He would put mats down for walking, especially in the winter. And he would hire DJs. And he'd had one DJ in one room, another DJ in the other room, and he would throw a party in a dance studio, and people would come and pay like they were going to a club, dance all night, going home happy. You can create that yourself. You don't need to go somewhere to do it. You just gotta want to share with people. Like people hear, DJs playing music and specific sounds and stuff in Spotify playlists. Well, rent a room, turn the lights down, if there's not a good floor, or if there is a good floor, bring some powder or whatever, things that you need to dance, have, set up a table with some drinks, little, snacks, and rock out.
Yeah, speaking of baby powder, one of my times in New York, before going to Funk Box, right? I think I was like, for some reason, I was really in my head. I was like, yeah, should I bring baby powder? Is it going to be too much? And then I was really contemplating, thinking hard, right? And I show up there. There's baby powder everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah,
because everybody knows, like, okay, even in the club, like, the floor gets sticky from people spilling drinks, and so you bring your baby powder. And even before then, like the elders are where we got the baby powder from. They brought baby powder to the club.
Yeah, not only was it there, but like there was like a community size bottle there. Just
like if you need it, it's right there, guys. Like help yourself. Yeah, I mean, and that's what I mean. You learn that through interaction with people. Like we weren't using baby powder at first. We learned that from the elders. Like, oh, the floor is sticky. That's why they have the baby powder, because, they're rubbing their feet in it and that gives them traction. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's what I'm talking about. You're not going to learn that, unless somebody has, a moment of ingenuity, like, okay, this is dry. What can I do? Oh, baby powder. No. That happens through interaction.
You mentioned communal aspects should be preserved. What about anything that is worth discarding or leaving behind?
Disregard again, as I said earlier, we need to lose the murder mentality. We need to lose the idea that there's one way of doing anything.
Okay.
People tend to think, oh, I learned this from this person and this is the end all be all. No, that's one perspective.
Yeah, like I don't know if this is part of the murder mentality, but my personal opinion, just as a bystander, is I always thought certain moves in dance were corny, which is like holding the gun and shooting somebody.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, okay, for me, the corny part is that kind of stuff, and you're doing every trick that you can think of, but none of it is connected to the music. Then what's the point of the music? If you're not going to dance to the music, then why have it? Why is there a DJ? The music is everything. The music is the soundtrack. The soundtrack is what moves the culture. As I tell people all the time, if you take away music, imagine if there was no music. There's no Spotify. There are no soundtracks. There are no radio stations. There are no. What do you need speakers for? There are no records. There are no turntables. You're losing the very essence of the things that we hold dearly because it's all connected through the music. And for me, it's disrespectful to have all this great music and you're not going to dance to it.
Well said. Have you always been as deeply connected to music as you are now, or did it come in stages, or any certain events in your life?
I think early on, I was disconnected from the music because I wasn't paying attention. I was so focused on the moment and the dance. But I learned from going to clubs and dancing with people. When I was a kid, I snuck into Studio 54 and I danced with this lady that had to be in her 30s or 40s. And she told me to stop dancing with my chest. Move your hips. And that was a mind-blowing event for me, because I'm like, what do you mean I'm dancing with my chest? Like, what does that mean? But she was trying to get me to relax and like move your hips. And that was a profound moment for me, because looking around, I'm noticing all of the people even the people that are, there are people that are dancing together and then there are people that are just dancing on their own, but everybody's into the music. And I'm thinking of what moves I'm going to do. So that completely changed my mindset of, what are you dancing for? Are you dancing for attention or because you love the music? And then that's, around that time is where I really started to listen to the music, and that made me appreciate what I'm hearing. And then I started to identify music that I knew that my parents played, that as a kid I hated when they played it because they played it all the time. But now I'm in a club and I'm hearing that music and everybody's going berserk. And I'm going berserk without even realizing this is music that I know. And so I'm like, well, damn, this sounds great. When my parents played it, I thought it was terrible, but now it sounds great. And it gave me an appreciation of the music and how important it is.
What are some must listen to on your soundtrack or your playlist?
James Brown.
James Brown. Okay.
All day, every day. And all the things that branch from James Brown, like Parliament Funkadelic, Bootsy Collins, Michael Jackson, Prince,
I actually seen. I met Prince in person one time at a party in LA. It was deep, LA for one of them, and then there was another party that his personal DJ Rashida was spinning at. But when I saw Prince in person, he was like on stage he looks like a giant, like his presence is a giant, but in person he's like way shorter than I. Yeah,
he is tiny. I mean, we met him. I met him on tour with CeCe Peniston. But I don't even remember it because he was like shrouded in shadow and stuff.
That sounds very Prince-like.
Yeah, my boy Khalif was like, yeah, we went to Paisley Park. And I'm like, that's right, we did. And he was like, we met Prince. Well, I was like, we met him? Then he was like, yeah. And then when I thought back, I was like, yeah, he just was like hello, but from afar, so. But that's what I mean. It's like that music is all branched off from James Brown. And then like from a hip hop perspective, James Brown is considered the very first B-boy because all of the original first and second generation B-boys wanted to be like James Brown, which Prince wanted to be like James Brown, which Michael wanted to be like James Brown. So it all ties in together. And, for me, I've heard so many different variations of James Brown's music and they all work. So for me, it starts with James, but I would go even beyond that. Like my favorite artist isn't connected to hip hop at all. It's Sade.
Okay.
I love her music. Their music. The band is called Sade. The singer is Helen Falashade Adu, but her name shortened is what the name of the band is, and I love her music. I love their music. I will listen to that and like listen to nothing else for a while. That music alone will take me somewhere else where hip hop doesn't or house doesn't go. And then there are even particular sounds in hip hop and house. Like for me, the Vogue house is amazing, and I don't hear people playing it. So I go out of my way to dig to find this because it's amazing music, but it's like the Vogue part of house, there's this separation now. But when we were growing up in the clubs, it was one thing, it's just house music, but now they have, this is Vogue music. And I'm like, it's folk music, but it's still house music, So I kind of love the energy from that music, and that just the more you listen to stuff, the more you start to investigate the connections.
Was there anything you did as far as like opening up your mind to being able to hear all the parts of music? Because I've listened to songs and then I've seen like high level dancers dance to that same song, and they'll highlight a part that I didn't even hear before.
Well, that came from learning to create music production, learning music theory. Once you learn about music, your ear is different, because now you're listening for things that the normal person isn't. Like you're listening specifically to drum patterns, rhythm patterns in percussion, cadence in vocalization, different rhythm patterns in the bass line. So now your ear is hearing all of these things and your body's trying to respond to what you feel from those different rhythms. And so it opens you up to listening to the music in a different way.
What's your thoughts on, with so many battles being popularized and accessible, does that take away from what you mentioned earlier about like dancing with people in the communal aspects, or what role?
The problem with the battles, for me, I think the battles are great because it pushes the level of creativity. But then, once you watch a few battles, it gets boring. There needs to be an equal level of time for people to express themselves beyond the battle. Like, not everybody wants to sit there and spectate. It's not a sporting event. It's not like you're going to a football game. And even in the football games, there are breaks. So the breaks in the battle should be what they call in Japan DJ time, where the people get to dance.
Yeah, because when I see some of the bigger events overseas, some are like 10,000 people, and then it's like a grand stage. It feels like I'm watching UFC or something,
Well, yeah, Just a Boo.
Yeah.
Just a Boo is like that. And in Bercy, it's 10, 12,000 people in the room, and it's an event. But even there, they have breaks, and there's a dance room, called La Boom on the other side where they have live music. So on those breaks, they encourage the people to go into La Boom if you're going to get something to eat or whatever, and then the dance room is over there. I think, that's genius. Shout out to Brucey Kanji to have at such a big event. So it gives the people time to process what they've watched and to express what they're feeling from watching these battles. And I think that needs to happen more. Like, there needs to be a time for people to just get together and dance because they want to dance, not because they want to win something.
Do you feel like the culture is headed towards its proper destination? Or it's
I don't know that there is a proper destination.
Okay.
I mean, people have asked me.
Or at least, where would you like it to head towards?
That's the thing. I wouldn't.
Okay.
I don't know where I didn't know it was going here now. So
Yeah.
I'm not trying to predict where it's going to go. From my perspective, the culture is a living, breathing organism. It's growing, and that growth, is a beautiful thing. The problem is when that growth is stagnated. That's the problem that I'm trying to alleviate, because you're going to hit a plateau and it's going to get to a point where something new needs to be introduced, a newer perspective to change this to make it grow in another direction. Otherwise, it's going to keep going until it hits a wall.
So are you saying we're in a stagnation right now?
I don't think we're in a stagnation, because we hit the wall with the pandemic.
Okay.
The pandemic happened and there were no battles. And then you got to see who really loved dancing and who was dancing for the battles. Who really loves the music and the camaraderie and the community, and who's just, who wants applause and likes and followers and wants to travel and do stuff. The thing for me is like, if all of that stuff goes away, would you still dance? And for my generation, it's like, all of that stuff didn't exist when we started. So we're dancing purely off of the love of the music. So if it all goes away tomorrow and there's a party, we're going to the party, regardless of if there's ever another battle or any of that. If there's going to be a good DJ, good music, and a good vibe, we'll show up for that. And there are literally thousands of people that we know that will show up for that.
Yeah, when I went to New York a few times, I felt that where I felt it was a very lineage or generational thing. Like there's grandmas, grandpas dancing in the street with little kids,
Yes.
and then I obviously had no idea who they are, but they've been there. They're not new to the place, you know.
Well, that's the thing. Who do you learn to dance from? The first teacher in your life is your mother, and you learn from. That's what I mean by communal. Your community starts with your family, and then you have, your you have your immediate family, then you have your distant cousins and friends of family and friends of the friends of family. So that's your community. It's an inner circle, then an outer, and it just keeps growing. And then there are connecting points to other people's communities.
Yeah. So since hip hop has gotten global, what do you think the impacts or contributions of these other countries are, considering that it originated over here?
Again, the creativity and the perspective. As I said in another interview, it's like I remember when the Korean b-boy scene had just started, and their level of creativity and athleticism completely changed the game. Before them, the Japanese had done that. Before the Japanese, the European b-boys coming to America is what brought breaking back into the forefront. So you need that. It's a new perspective and a new energy. And you always need that new energy, that new perspective, because it's forcing you to grow. It's the catalyst that pushes the culture to go in. And, it might not be a different direction. It might just be the same direction, but you're taking the long way around or the short way around. It pushes the culture to go somewhere else, not to stay at this plateau.
How did this culture spread over there, anyways? Like, what was that point like?
One of the first, I think, the first tours, the first hip hop tours, are what took the culture overseas. I think it's 1981, 1982. Those were the first hip hop tours, and I think like with Rocksteady Crew and Grandmaster Caz and Furious Five, some of Africa Bambaataa, they took the culture abroad, and that is the starting point for a lot of the countries. And also, what I've learned from other people is that the real starting point happens just like here in the States with the military. When you have people from different areas stationed somewhere, they're bringing that culture with them to wherever they're stationed, and they're sharing it. It's kind of how, like in New York, we learned about popping and strutting from the Bay from a person that was from the Bay but was in the military and was stationed on the East Coast, and they shared their culture with some people, and those people brought that to New York and shared it with other people. So that happened with hip hop as well. You had GIs, in Europe and Germany that were stationed there, and they brought this music with them. They brought the culture with them in the dance, and so they're sharing it with other soldiers and people that they interact with. And at that time, this is people's first, contact with hip hop culture. This is because there were no music videos, there's no MTV, none of that yet. And so this is their first contact. And then the rap tours come, the hip hop tours come with the dancers and the MCs and the DJs and the graffiti. And then after that, you got the movies and TV, and now MTV's starting to show stuff. And so it all interconnects, but it starts really with the military people, people from different cities, different areas, being stationed together and sharing information, sharing of culture.
So it was like just a natural osmosis and migration process. Was there any particular crews or teachers that went overseas with intent to spread it?
I don't know. Like I said,
The reason why I asked is I believe it was VooDoo Ray and Ejo that went over to Japan to spread house. Yeah, so it seems like there was like like a clear point there, right? Is that the same
No,
for hip hop?
let me go back. They didn't go to spread house. They went to perform
Okay.
with an artist.
Okay.
And it's the performing with the artist that they got to spread the culture that they're bringing.
Yeah.
And that was the catalyst for them to return and then to do what they do. But their intent wasn't originally to go, oh, we're going to spread house. No, you're going to perform.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's you're going to do something in particular. Like the GIs are going as military personnel, not ambassadors of culture. It's just the culture comes with them, and it's it's human nature to share where you're from. What your community, how you were raised, what your particular culture is, and that's a natural event when people get together. So it's after that the intent of sharing, and spreading the culture comes. That's why I'm using the reference of the soldiers, because B-Boy Storm is who told us about that. That's how he learned about hip hop, pre-movies and all of the other stuff. And
was he in the military?
No, but he had people that he knew that were in the military. And that's how they first learned of stuff. And then the rap tours came with the intent of this is hip hop. And then people make the immediate reference of, oh, I saw these guys doing the same thing at this club, and they were, soldiers, and they were stationed here, and now you have a reference point. You have something that's relative, and now your interest is piqued.
So what's been your experience in Japan, for example? Because it seems like Elite Force has a big presence over there.
Oh yeah, we brought the freestyle hip-hop aspect. We visited Japan. The first time I went to Japan was 1990, and Elite Force didn't exist yet. And we went there for this.
Was it
fashion.
TRF? Because I've seen some clips with Link and Terry for TRF.
Yeah, that's years later.
Okay.
That's like a decade later. This is before that. We went to it was with a fashion house called Men's Biggie Wear, and they brought us to do basically a fashion show and performance. And so we came, we wore their clothes, we danced, we did video, we met Japanese dancers, DJs. It was the first time that I saw people other than Jamaicans with dreadlocks. I saw Japanese guys with full-on beards and dreadlocks smoking weed, and I was just like, wait, where am I? Like, what the hell is going on here? Y'all got your locks are longer than mine. Like, it was crazy.
That's a good point, because since they're in Japan, like, who even knows how to do that hair there?
I don't know, but they had full on.
You know what I mean?
And the thing about it is, I'm talking about guys not with the sewn in locks. These dudes had their hair was locked, and I'm like, wow. And then when the other side of that is when we came as Elite Force, we met Japanese kids with afros, and I'm like, hold on, wait. You got that's a real afro. Like, usually when we would go, we had our locks. People wanted, regular people wanted to touch our hair, and we were like annoyed by that. But then when we met the Japanese kids with afros, they wanted us to touch their hair to show that this is real afro. And we're like, how the fuck did you get an afro? Like, how does this work? It was such a culture shock, but it shows the influence of the culture and it made us appreciate afros and even we met dancers that had afros, dancers that had locks, dancers that were bald. They all cut their hair off. Dancers wearing baggy jeans and Timberlands and polo and Tommy Hill. Like, it was a trip to see it, but it made us appreciate it more. Like, y'all like the stuff that we are doing this much that you're doing it too. Like, it was a trip.
So, was there any part of you that was like, oh, you're culture appropriating or you're biting?
No, because it's not presented that way. it's not they're not doing it as a mask. They're showing you how much they appreciate it. Like, especially for me in Japan, meeting dancers that appreciate like low life culture. To wear polo costs a lot of money. It's an investment. It's a lifestyle. So if they're doing this, it's not to be cool. They really appreciate it. They really want to be a part of that bigger movement. They're invested in it. And it's the same thing. One of the main things in Japan that let me know that they really love the culture was the DJs. The DJs, the level of turntablism and expertise was so high, it was like, that they put in the work. There's no way that they could mix and scratch and do tricks and blends like this if they didn't really love this. It takes a lot of talent and time to be like, this isn't overnight. So, and then you meet one DJ and then he has other DJ friends, and they're all good at specific things and the specific types of music that they like. And it's like, you understand that, they love this. They're not doing it like a job. Like I knew a couple of DJs, they just DJ'd. They didn't DJ in the clubs. They DJ'd because they wanted to be DJs. They made tapes. They they were making mixtapes, and that wasn't their job. They had corporate jobs. They wore suit and ties. And when they got off work, they went and bought records and went to DJ. So I knew that there was there's a level of appreciation there, not, we're doing this as a show, it's a costume.
So, like, what would be the fine line between what you just described as appreciation versus appropriation?
Appropriation is when it's a costume, when you're doing it for attention, not because you love it, because it's a fad. It's something to make you think that's cool, not something that you've embraced. For me, again, meeting dancers, DJs, people who really love the culture, they're invested in it. The funniest thing for me was Japan built up an entire industry through the dance, with dance studios and teaching. That entire industry started with them. Prior to Japan, no one was teaching hip hop outside of America, outside of New York.
So Japan was the first one?
Yeah. They had a full on industry. They opened studios and they embraced. I have friends that once they got into the culture, they specifically wanted to do this so they didn't have to do the family business. They took, their money, or if they won like a contest or something, they invested their money and opened up a studio. And that in turn led to other places doing the same thing, like Taiwan, Korea. It had a domino effect. All of these other places were doing it like Japan did it, and they did it first.
Yeah, the reason why I asked about cultural appropriation, because, since 2020, it's been a very hot topic, where I think maybe there's like a little overcorrection. Now certain people are like fearful of like trying anything out because they don't want to be labeled as culture appropriating, and I think it's kind of holding the spread and the appreciation of the culture back.
Well, it's not really that. What people don't understand is America was built on cultural appropriation. So start there. If you start there, then you'll understand why that's a problem. America was built on cultural appropriation. They took different things from different people and exploited them, and those people got no credit. And that was still happening all the way up until 2020. So it's just now we live in the information age where information is shared in the blink of an eye. Whereas before, what they used to do is they would culturally appropriate stuff and spin it so you think that they actually created it. Now you can't spin that because everybody has access to the actual information of where things come from and who invented what and who innovated what. And so now it's like, this isn't, it's not cool for you to wear an Indian headdress because you're not an Indian. And they're not Indians. They're Native Americans. They're Aboriginal people. They were never from India. So that narrative is no longer cool. And people are starting to understand that, like, things that you took for granted before, you're not going to be able to take for granted now. You're going to be called out on it because it was never cool, but we were made to think that it was.
What are your thoughts on being a guest of the culture versus a resident?
We're all guests in the culture. I don't know why people get so offended by that. Okay, I'm from New York. I'm from Brooklyn. When I go to the Bronx, now we're all part of hip hop, but hip hop in the Bronx is the start point. Hip hop in Brooklyn is very different than a hip hop in the Bronx. When I go to the Bronx, even though I'm a hip hop practitioner and I've grown up in it, I'm a guest in the Bronx because I'm not from there. And what they do is a little different than what we do. If I go to Harlem, I'm a guest in Harlem. I don't live there. I'm not from there. I have a differing perspective. So when I go there, I have to have a respect for how they do things. When I leave New York and I go to the West Coast and I get into popping, locking, strutting, or whatever, or even crump, I'm a guest in that culture because that culture is not from where I'm from. And I think people, if you're bothered by that, then you're insecure about who you are. Because I'm never bothered by being a guest. A guest is you go to someone's house and you learn your shit. That person is opening their house to you and sharing with you. You don't just go and take advantage of that. Like, you let us into your house today. I don't just go in your bathroom. I ask you, can I go to your bathroom? I ask, can I go to your kitchen? Can I have a cup? I'm not just walking in and, going into your kitchen, opening the refrigerator and making myself a sandwich. That's appropriation. That's disrespect of the culture that lets you in open arms. And we're all guests. When I go to Japan, I can't go to Japan and think I'm in Brooklyn and I'm going to do it how we do it in Brooklyn, because I'm not. I'm in Japan. They have an entirely different perspective and outlook and way, of doing things than we do in America, much less Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's very insightful. It makes sense to me about being more precise like that, because there was like some talk over here about pretty much it resorted down to being a skin color thing, right? So if you're black, then everyone is a resident. If you're not black, then you're always a
nonsense. It's nonsense. Okay, if you're black, you're a resident. Okay, black people don't even believe that. Because if in the South, if you're not from the South, if you're from the North like I am, in the South, they have completely different customs than we do in New York. When we go to the South, we think they're weird. They think we're weird. We think they're country. They think we're, stuck up. They have an entirely different way of life than we do in the South. On the West Coast, they have an entirely different, okay, just here in California. NorCal and SoCal are called that, not just geographically, but culturally, they're different.
Yeah. NorCal is very, very different. And SoCal is definitely very different.
And you're still in California, but when you go from north to south to north, there's a difference in culture. And you got to show respect for that. If you don't, then you're not showing respect for where you're from in the first place. You're being, disingenuous to where you're from by going somewhere else. If you're from NorCal and you go to, Southern California and you dress up like you're a Vato or something, and that's not cool. Or you dress up like you're a Crip, you Crippin' and Bloodin', that ain't from up here. Y'all do something different. The history of that is there, and they're not going to come here and appropriate the history here. They're just as much of a guest here as if they came to the East Coast, and you're in the same geographical location. So that's what I mean. That's an insecurity of people's personal. People want to make everything racial because, again, America was built off of cultural appropriation. So you cannot have that conversation go away at any time, because that's what this country was founded on. And the reason why people get into the racial overtones and colorisms is because that's what America was built off of. It's America. There was no racial overtones pre-triangle slave trade. There were no black or white people pre-triangle slave trade. That didn't exist. There were no white people. That whole euphemism and culture was built off of the triangle slave trade. The English didn't think that the Spaniards were white. The Italians didn't think the Irish didn't think the Italians were white, because there were no one monolithic people. They're all from different places. It wasn't until this advent of the triangle slave trade where race was introduced, and race is introduced on the race to see who can colonize the most of the world. That's where the whole race thing comes from. Prior to that, you had people, it was focused on ethnicity, not race. There was no monolithic white people, black people, Asian people. If there were, then Genghis Khan wouldn't have, destroyed everyone he came in contact with.
I like what you're saying. At least it makes sense to my mind, where it's like just being mindful of where you are, where you come from, and no one gets a free pass is what I'm hearing from you.
Well, yeah, the thing about it is, if you want people to respect where you're from, you have to respect where they're from. Again, I don't go dress up like I got on all red. It's my mother's favorite color. I'm not walking around talking about I'm blood this, blood that, because that's not my culture. This is not a costume. I'm not trying to portray something that I'm not. I'm in red because it's my mother's favorite color, and I'm polo head to toe because I'm about that low life. That's not it's not, that's a respect for where I come from. I'm not trying to be like someone else. I'm not trying to portray, someone else's culture or perspective. I'm bringing you, this is what you see is what you get, and I'm sticking to that. I don't need to be a part of something else or portray a character. I'm comfortable in my own skin, with my own deficiencies. And that's what people need to learn. You don't need the costume. You don't need to appropriate. You need to show respect. And if you show respect, you'll understand that all cultures are interconnected anyway, because all people are interconnected.
So you mentioned earlier that like a lot of the events or the big events are overseas. Why do you think it's so much bigger over there compared to over here? Because over here, when I think of like a 12,000 person dance event, it's like I can't even imagine it. I have no idea what that.
Well, primarily because, from my perspective, once these battles were introduced over there, they capitalized on it because that's all that they had. They didn't have, they didn't know about nightlife and clubbing, and they didn't have, like we did, an industry that they didn't have a Hollywood or a music industry where, the dancers would have, different aspects and venues to show their goods and their trade and their talent. So this was their avenue to exploit their talent, and they jumped on it, and then it became what it's become now, which is a huge thing. But that's the difference between, Europe and Asia and America. One of the things that always trips me out is when people talk about, when they think of dance in Europe, you have all of these different countries, and they have their own perspective on the dance and the culture. And when they come to America, they think of the dance as New York, LA. And like, they don't look at scale or, or geography.
Okay.
America is as big as Europe, but it's one country. Why would you think the dance is only in two places? And that's what happens. They don't understand that the connections in Europe, you're not going to have that in America that way, because we have, although we're one country, we're not interconnected by one thing. The opportunities for dancers in New York are very different from dancers in LA. And the opportunities for dancers in LA are very different from dancers in the South or dancers in the North. And, that whole competitive aspect is cool, but most dancers here, if they can make a living from dance and they never have to enter a battle, why would they enter a battle? And that's the difference. The dancers over there, they don't have those opportunities.
I see what you're saying.
They can't go on tour with Beyonce. They can't do the MTV VMA Awards or, do a commercial for, Planters Peanuts or something like that. Those opportunities are not there. Battles are. Classes are. So, they use the battle as advertising. I won this, I'm good. Now, I can come to your country as a battle guest and show off there, and then I can teach or I can judge because I've won this, this, and this. Whereas here in America, you have dancers who have never entered a battle, but can teach class and have 70 people in every class. So why would they think about battle? Why would I need to do that? Like, I got 70 people in the class, every class.
That's a good point. Like, I didn't realize that, or connect two and two together about like the opportunities outside of the battles over here in the entertainment industry.
Their entertainment industry is never focused or looked at dance as a commodity. They were not able to commodify dance in that way like we did. Now they do have like what's called concert dance or theater. They've had multiple opportunities for that. But like music videos and tours and all of that, they don't have that like we've had that. We've had that for literally, 40 years now. And that's the difference, at least from my perspective.
Would you say that foundations in hip hop has changed or evolved over the years? And what is electric boogie and where does it fit into hip hop dance?
Okay, what people don't understand is the foundation. When you say foundation, you're talking about the building blocks of something. And the foundation hasn't changed. If the foundation changed, the entire dance would change. Okay, it's like if you change the foundation of, what's the foundation of us from animals? We walk upright. We walk on 2 feet, whereas, other mammals walk on all fours. That's the difference between us. If we go back to all fours, we can't. Our body's not made for that. So the foundation of what we are is standing upright and moving that way. The foundation of the dance is the same way. People tend to think of the foundation as steps. The foundation is not the steps. The foundation is the music and how it moves you. That's the foundation. That hasn't changed. The perspective of how you use that has changed because we used it again from the standpoint of nonverbal communication and a party. Now they're using that as a means of, competitive, in a competitive arena, not in a communicative arena. So that's what's different, but the foundation hasn't changed. The idea is to let the music move you and to be creative in that movement. What we're showing you, what they're looking at as foundation, is just building blocks. It's tools for you to use. So if I show you these, what they refer to as party dances, it's giving you something to use to build your dance. So you don't start from zero. Because if you start from zero, then what are you going to do? And the foundation is it always starts from the base of staying on beat and moving to the music. That's the foundation. And most people miss that because they think, oh, I got to do this movement or I got to do that move. No, you don't. You're supposed to take that move and flip it.
Would you say that there's a contribution of that from more people taking class and not being exposed to, I guess, the club side?
I think it's a little bit of both. It's a mixture of both, because people taking class is one thing, but taking class from who? You can't learn from someone that doesn't know. And a lot of times, for years, I'm watching people teaching stuff and I'm wondering, like, what makes that hip hop? Like, show me what makes that hip hop. Because when I do it, you know it's hip hop. Why? Because it's a reflection of the culture behind it. What you're doing has no connection to the actual culture. So that's why there's a question of, why are these two things different? There's a culture behind the dance. It's not just the moves. The moves don't matter without the music. The moves don't matter without the culture that spawned the music. The way we do the moves and how we do them, what we wear when we're doing the moves, all comes from the culture behind it. When you're separated from that in a studio, what you're getting is just movement, but there's no meaning to that movement. That's what happened with jazz. That's why when you think of jazz dance now, you don't think of jazz music. The music that went with jazz, they call swing now, because they made a complete separation. We're not trying to have that happen in the street dance. The music is the most important component and the first representation of the culture. The music and the movement are yin and yang. They cannot be separated. It's time and space. It's life or death. It's peanut butter and jelly. You're not taking one and leaving the other.
So I definitely want to get into that, but backtrack a little bit. So what are your thoughts on what is electric boogie and how important is it to hip hop dance?
Well, the thing about electric boogie that people have to understand is electric boogie is the b-boy perspective of popping.
Okay.
Electric boogie, everyone in New York City that did electric boogie knew that it was popping. Or it came from popping. There were, three terms. There was popping, pop locking, and electric boogie. And they're all the same thing. And we all knew that it was not from New York. Everyone, if you saw someone doing the dance and they knew anything about the dance, they got it from someone else who got it from someone else who got it from someone from the West Coast, or from the South, from someone in the South who learned from someone in the West Coast. So we knew that. The thing about electric boogie is it's a b-boy perspective of popping. It was completely incorrect. And over time, it was corrected again by people who actually knew and lived the dance. Like Sugar Pop, when he moved to New York, he completely changed how people pop, because people were popping with their shoulders, and he's popping with his muscles, and you could see the difference. People are like, well, damn, why does he pop like that? And he's like, because I'm not doing this, I'm doing that. He's showing you the technique. And you had other people that were from the West Coast that did, similar things, and people that visited, like I met dancers that had moved from the West Coast. They were showing you different aspects of these things. And then you had like Sugar Pop visiting, you had Pop and Pete visiting, you had Boogaloo Shrimp and Taco coming through on the breaking tour. Like, so you had people showing you how it was actually done, and that completely changed the dance. Everybody started to do it like how it's done at the source instead of your own personal interpretation.
So if I understand you right, what is that b-boy perspective of popping? And are you saying it's a shoulder thing that's what they brought in, or that's how they saw it?
Okay, poppers, you're supposed to use, there's a particular technique to what you're doing. It's a flexing of the muscles. Now, the shoulder thing comes from, it's an inadvertent thing when you're trying to pop. Your shoulders inadvertently will pop. But that's The pop doesn't come from that. The pop is supposed to be that. It's supposed to come from the muscles, not from, your shoulder going up and down. And one of the easiest ways of understanding that is try shoulder popping with your arms up here. You can't. But can you pop with your muscles? Yes, you can. So that's the difference. The thing about that made Electric Boogie stand out was the creativity of it. If you don't know what you're doing, you're going to do what feels good and you're going to try to build on that. And that's what happened. People saw bits and pieces of popping and, took that piece and ran with it and expanded on it. And then later on, when you learn and you see like people like Poppin' Taco, God bless the dead, or Poppin' Pete, or, Boogaloo Shrimp, aka Turbo, you're seeing like, damn, how are they doing what they're doing? And you realize like there's an actual technique that they're using that you don't know, and you need to find that out if you want to look like they look. And that's what kind of changed the dance over time. But Electric Boogie was just our interpretation of what we saw from, a minute clip of Soul Train, seeing Electric Boogaloos on Soul Train, or, a quick clip of someone in a commercial, or, you're not seeing the totality. You're seeing a bit piece.
It's a snapshot, right?
Yeah. And it's like not like now where you have, IG or TikTok, you can download or you can play it again and you can slow-mo it and you can adjust it so you can really learn from what you're looking. There was none of that then. You got that one moment and you had to retain what little you saw and try to find how you're going to apply it to look like what you saw, which, your mind is very fickle. What you saw and what it actually looks like are two different things over time.
Yeah, very interesting. Well said. Let's go back to what you said earlier about learning a dance, or learning, or meaning like the need to learn it, who to learn from, and I guess by that extension, like what makes someone qualified to teach and what to look for in a teacher.
Well, from my perspective, there's a difference teaching and sharing. Sharing what you have is one thing, but teaching requires a responsibility, because if you're teaching someone something, then there has to be a method to it. There has to be some background information that you're sharing that they can check into themselves. It has to be beyond just your perspective. If you're teaching, like if I'm teaching the dance is bigger than just me. So I have a responsibility to share information that I've gotten from other people or from other sources. It's not just my perspective. I have to look at the dance as a whole, not just how I dance. That's the responsibility of a teacher, because you're trying to broaden someone's information so that they can build their own dance. You're not teaching them to be like you. You're teaching them to make their own. If you're teaching them to be like you, then you're a terrible teacher. It's for me, I look at it as from the standpoint of martial arts. The sensei or the master is teaching the students to be better. They're not teaching them to be on par or to be underneath. They're teaching them to grow into their own so that they have their own perspective of what it is. And then they become the master. And if you're not approaching it, that's a level of responsibility. If you're not approaching it from that, then stop calling yourself a teacher. Just share what you know. Like I'm sharing what I know. Then that lets go of that responsibility, because, and it also gives you a frame of responsibility because you're sharing just what you know. You're not trying to be like, oh, come back to me because I know more. Like I'm sharing something that I learned and that's it. That's the end of it. There's nothing more to that. But if you're teaching, you're looking to be responsible for someone growing up, their growth in this particular, perspective and field of reference. And that's a responsibility, at least from my perspective.
So like, what are the qualities or merits that would qualify someone to take on that responsibility?
Well, first of all, you have to know what the hell you're talking about. There are a lot of people that regurgitate information, without actually researching that information, or actually you're giving someone a formula that you haven't actually tried.
Okay, so let me rephrase it this way, right? So I think I don't have any big numbers, but my experience seems to indicate that you can go to any city and probably find a hip hop dance class.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be completely different, better for worse, in all those cities, even in the same city, right? What's your views on that? Is it like there's obviously lots of qualified people teaching, but also lots of non-qualified people teaching.
Well, that's the genie out of the bottle. There's no standard to it. It's the same thing. It's not just hip hop. It's across the board. It's house, it's breaking, it's popping, it's locking, it's whacking. There's no standard, because the dance studios don't require there to be a standard. There's a standard for ballet, though. You can't walk in a ballet. You can't walk in any studio and just say, I'm here to teach ballet, because it's been codified. It's been standardized. And that's what's been missing, but has been happening over this last decade or so. People are like starting to understand, when you go to a class, if you go to a dance class, you're paying to learn how to dance. If you leave that dance class and you didn't learn how to dance, what did you pay for? And that's what's starting to happen. People are starting to understand that, I learned some choreography, and it's nice and it's cool and it looks good on film, but what else can I do with this? Nothing, because it's someone else's choreography. You didn't learn how to dance. You didn't learn how to create your own choreography. You didn't learn about the music and how the choreography corresponds with that music or any other piece of music. You just learned a few steps, put it together with a bunch of other people, filmed it, and y'all look great. And that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But then you start to realize, if you're doing that over time, it becomes monotonous. What am I paying for? To feel good? You're going to feel good, you could drink a cup of coffee or something, smoke a cigarette.
Yeah, so if you were to decide on a standard, what would that standard look like to you?
The standard is based in, for me personally, and what I teach and how I teach, the standard is based on 6 questions. Who, what, where, when, how, and why. Okay, if you were, from my perspective, you have to look at things from that standpoint. First of all, the dance is based in the music. So the music is the why. The who is you, that's your character. What are you doing? That's your vocabulary. How are you doing it? That's your technique. When you put all of those things together, that's your creativity. And where you do it has a huge influence on all of the above. Because dancing, concert dance is not the same as dancing in a studio. Dancing in a studio is not the same as dancing in a battle. Dancing in a battle is not the same as dancing in a music video. Dancing in a music video is not the same as dancing on the street. So the where, that's your performance. So those 6 things are the criterion that I use for not only judging, but teaching. It's rhythm, technique, vocabulary, creativity, character, performance.
So, is there any discussion amongst the elders to agree on a standard and roll it out, per se?
I don't know in particular, because most of the elders, like our elders, aren't into teaching, regularly. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But for me, from my generation, that's now everybody's agreeing to that standard. That's what they're using a a variation of that standard is what they're using to judge in the Olympics. That's a trivium system. Instead of 6, they put the 2 together. It's 2, 4, and 6, and it becomes 3. And they use those as that's their judging rubric. But that's what I mean. We've reached the point where there has to be some kind of standard. Otherwise, how do you know what something is versus something else?
Yeah. So in capoeira, for example, they have different ranks, right? And then you can only open a school if you're a certain rank. So I think it's professor. Or obviously mestre, contramestre is higher up, but professor is like the minimum, you know?
Right.
So yeah, it seems like it would be valuable if there's something that within the street dance culture is like, hey, I am this thing. So like someone on the outside could know like, hey, this person's qualified or vetted.
Well, that's what we've been introducing with the 36 Chambers. You know, we're using the model of martial arts to teach people and to show the codification of what we're doing. That's what the 36 Chambers is based in. First day, you know, the model of martial arts is what we're using. So in martial arts, especially in boxing, you learn what? Footwork and foundation. You know, in mixed martial arts, you learn striking and technique. You learn ground and pound. You learn grappling, and you learn freestyle. So we translate footwork and foundation to just that. You learn how to use footwork and how that's the foundation of the dance. Striking and technique is the technique of how you're doing the dance, and striking is accenting the music. You know, grappling is partner dance because it's 2 people. You know, ground and pound is tops and drops. Learn to dance at levels. There's high, there's center, there's low, and then there's the ground. And then freestyle is the culmination of all of that. How to, put all of these things together without thinking. Like when you're fighting, you're putting together striking, grappling, but it's not in order. You have to react to your opponent. Freestyle in the dance is a reaction to what you're hearing in the music and how that makes you feel. How you feel is how you're going to react. Just like in a fight, how you feel is going to be your reaction. As Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah, when Cricket was here, he mentioned how on Joe Rogan, when Joe interviewed Mike Tyson, I think in one of the early interviews, they had a small desk, and Joe felt uncomfortable sitting so close to Mike Tyson because he's this huge human, and so he had to get a bigger desk just to create some space.
Yeah, because he was intimidated by Mike. He's like, man, this dude might go off and knock me out. Not realizing that Mike Tyson's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, because the beautiful thing about Mike Tyson now is he's an elder, and he's trying to teach people that he was fighting because he was conditioned to fight, not because he wanted to fight. He didn't want to be the baddest guy. He had to be the baddest guy to protect himself, and that was his upbringing. But if you would have just left him to his own devices, he'd have been flying pigeons and doing other stuff.
Flying pigeons?
Yeah. He would have been a very, laid back and low key human being, because he wouldn't have had to be fearful all of the time. And that's the things that if you listen to his conversations in his podcast, those are the things that he talks about. Like, I was afraid, so I had to build myself up to protect myself from that fear.
Earlier, you mentioned that you use those 6 questions for judging. What are some other criteria? Because I think judging is another big mystery in dance, right? Like, I think in other disciplines, whether it's like MMA or sports, there's at least some kind of narration or play-by-play commentary, so people have an idea of what's happening or what the judges are thinking, right?
Right.
But it seems like unless you actually talk to the judges in person, then nobody really knows what's being judged on.
And that's my point by standardization. Do you know what you're looking at? Yeah. If you don't know what you're looking at, then how are you judging it? For me, I came to that conclusion also from doing the choreo contest like Hip Hop International, they have their judging rubric and they break it down into two different parts. There's performance, and then there's I forgot the other term that they use for the skill. So you have a set of judges that judge only on performance, and then another set of judges that judge on skill. For me, it's a weird system and a weird dichotomy, but it works because it gives you something specific to look at. And the performance people know they have a specific set of criterion for just performance. So they just look for that and grade it that way. And the skill people just look for a particular rubric and skill, and they grade it. And then those two are combined, and that's the total, and that's the score for each group. That's an actual system and a standard that was set by Hip Hop International. And for me, that's what needs to happen with what they call in Europe stand-up dance. That we need something like that to educate people so that they'll know what they're looking at. It's the same reason in breaking. Like, no one cares. No b-boys care if you do a bunch of flips and land in the cipher. They're just going to be like, so what? Everybody can flip. What do you get for that flip? Nothing. Now, if you do those flips and you land into footwork or a freeze or power, then it's like, oh, okay. The average person is just going to go crazy because this person flipped. So what? Because everybody can flip. It's like, in the Olympics. You're not getting, credit for the flip. It's what you're doing, how you do the flip. The application of what you're doing that gives you the points, how you stick the landing. If you don't know those things, then it just looks amazing. But after 5 minutes of seeing people do the same flips, you're going to be bored to death. Like, okay, I've seen that 5, 6, 7 times now. What else is there? So that's why you need standardization. That's why you need a criteria, a rubric of judging, so that not only are the judges educated, but the spectators know what the judges are judging on. So that way, like in MMA, that's why you have so many, in MMA and in boxing, that's why the knockout is so important, because you don't want to leave it in the judge's hands because you don't know what they're judging on.
Yeah, knockout is binary, right? Like this, you can't argue.
There's no getting around the knockout. You know what I'm saying? The judges all have to agree that person's knocked the fuck out and that person knocked them the fuck out. They're the winner. And that's in dance, it's very rarely that you're going to get a knockout. So you gotta have some kind of standard to judge upon.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like an expert, but I'm not like an outsider either, kind of somewhere in between.
Right.
But it seems like the events and the judging portion is murky to my eyes, where I've seen offbeat judges, put it that way, right? I see offbeat judges making calls based on their level. And then it kind of like creates this ripple effect where, and so I have a guilty pleasure. I'm going to confess to you. I like reading YouTube comments. I like reading YouTube comments.
Right.
Because like sometimes you get some gems that are like really insightful, but other times you get some other like very reactionary crowd group thinking,
Right. I laugh at that kind of stuff because I'm like, again, if you read the comments, some people think like, again, those flips, that was amazing. How come they didn't win? And the other person is like, because they didn't do shit. Like, so what? They could do a front tuck. 7, 8 other b-boys did a front tuck. So that's what I mean by the standardization. If everyone knew that you needed to do those flips and land in a freeze or into footwork or power, the value of the flip decreases. It's just like in the dance. the value of tricks only goes so far if they're on beat. If they're off beat, you're not getting credit for that. I don't care if you could twist yourself into a pretzel. If it's off beat, who cares? Then why do I have a DJ? Why are we playing music if you're going to do all of that and it's not connected to the music? So for me as a judge, I don't care. That's not anything to me. It's technically it's nice, but rhythmically it's nothing. And from a vocabulary standpoint, how do I explain that? What are you doing? From a character standpoint, it's nice, but if someone else can do the same thing, then who gets the most points? Because they turned themselves into a pretzel and you turned yourself into a pretzel. But they're on beat. Their pretzelization is in time with all of the music. You just turned into a pretzel. Should I put, mustard on you? Or like, what makes that special? So that's what I mean by, standardization. There needs to be some way of recognizing, how these things connect and what gives the value of that connection. And if it's not on beat, then for me, the rest of it doesn't matter. Because again, the foundation is in the music.
Yeah, so the music is very key, and I'm definitely agreeing with that, right? Just bringing up awareness that even it sounds on key, and for people who are in music, it probably sounds very obvious, like when someone's offbeat or on beat. I've literally seen battles where one of the contestants was clapping to help the other person. Hey, this is where this is where the music is at, right? Yeah. And I don't think some of the judges or even the other dancer was registering like, hey, I'm off beat right now. They just didn't.
And this is my point. First of all, if you're a judge and you're off beat, you shouldn't be a judge. You don't get to sit in that seat. Because again, if you're off beat, then why do we have a DJ? Why even play music? What is the point? The dance does not exist without the music.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It just seems like on one end, the dance, especially overseas, is like reaching a very high level with creativity-wise, right?
Yeah.
Some dancers I can think off the top of my head. While the other side is like also some events overseas, there's like offbeat judges where it's like it's kind of going this way,
Exactly. And I use people tend to think like, oh, you're just being like that. No, if you've ever seen a salsa congress, you don't see any offbeat salsa dancers. Why? Because the music matters.
That's a good point. I've actually never seen the offbeat salsa dancer. Now that you brought it up.
No, you're not gonna. Okay, do you see? If you go to a swing contest, do you see do the offbeat swing people win? No, they don't, because the music matters. You go to a dance hall contest. Do the offbeat people win? No, because dance hall is to dance hall music.
Yeah, the most explicit one I can think of is probably tap dance, right? Like it's very obvious.
Tap dance is to rhythm. They're creating rhythms with their feet. Like, come on. That's the important part. Like, I don't understand why people don't get that. It's not just street dance, And I think again, that level of disconnect is only through monetization. It's what happened to jazz. Again, if you saw a jazz dance contest, are they playing jazz music? Is there a jazz aesthetic to it? Do you recognize the history of the dance and the culture that spawned it? Are they intertwined? No, they're not. Because jazz in the studio is very different from jazz music and the culture behind music. The culture behind that music.
You don't have any wishes on where hip-hop should head towards, but it sounds like there's at least some stuff you don't want it to head towards.
Well, what I want people to understand is take it where you want to go, but bring the music with you. Bring the culture with you. Bring the community or the communal aspect with you. And wherever it goes, I'm all for it. But those things have to go with it. Those things are the things that are pulling the culture, not you pulling it. That is what's moving the culture. Those are the pillars. And if you lose those, then it's not going to be the same. It's going to be something different. And if it's something different, there's nothing wrong with that, but call it something else.
Earlier you mentioned VooDoo Ray. Can you speak more about VooDoo Ray?
Can I? VooDoo Ray,
like
my brother.
Because I think a lot of people don't really know who he is to compare to you guys, because you guys are more exposed,
Right.
But I know that he, just from how important he is to you guys, he's someone important in the scene.
VooDoo Ray is one of the house dance pioneers. VooDoo Ray is the reason we have, VooDoo Ray is who brought out a lot of the other dancers in the scene and brought house to prominence. Not only was he connected to the music and the culture through dance, he's connected through the DJs as well. And the club, he was not only a dancer, but a promoter. He promoted parties. He created his own parties. One of the first parties that I went to of his, he rented the basement of a movie theater. And he got some DJs and they set up speakers and lights, and he threw a party in the basement of a movie theater. And it was one of the best parties I ever went to. That's what I mean. It's like, if you don't have access to the space, you create the space. He used to throw a party at a dance studio. He would rent the dance studio on the weekend at night, cover all of the mirrors, put a flooring down, like a plastic flooring, because it's in the winter, so people are coming in. If it's raining or snowing, you're not tracking water everywhere. He set up lights. He had a snack desk, drinks, and 2 DJs in each room. So if you came to the party and you wanted this particular sound of house, it's in there. If you want disco or hip hop and funk, it's in there. And you got to, he created that party because he didn't have access to a club.
Yeah, I've only met him once in Mexico at this event called Mikasa.
Okay.
But the vibe I got from him when I met him was that he's kind of like the glue that brings everyone together.
Yeah. That's what I mean. He's one of the focal points in the culture. He brought a lot of people and things together. And the only drawback that he had was asthma. So that's why he didn't dance as much as he could have, because the asthma limited him over time, so he got less into the dance and more into the promotion because he couldn't. If he could, he would have never stopped dancing because he loved it. It's the asthma that he had severe asthma. And, but, he was one of the people in house that, brought it all together.
Yeah. Would you
And wait, let me correct myself. Not just in house, because he comes from hip hop. He was a b-boy, a boogie boy. He was originally called Boogie Ray, pre-house. So he was a part of both cultures, and he was one of the focal points to show that they're interconnected.
So would you say that the scene would have been a lot different had he not been around?
No VooDoo Ray, yeah. No VooDoo Ray, there's probably no connection with Ejo and Marjorie. There's no connection with those dancers that I just mentioned and us. No VooDoo Ray, there's a lot less parties. There's no a couple of clubs and DJs that connected through him with the dancers that don't happen because he's not there as the catalyst to make that connection. So yeah, as I said, he was a focal point, a pillar in our culture.
Yeah, well, shout out to VooDoo Ray, rest in peace.
Yes.
So let's talk about some of your experiences working in the industry. Because when EJ was on here, he mentioned that you were Mariah Carey's choreographer for like 10 years.
10 years, yes.
Yeah, what was that like?
It was great. Shout out to MC. Shout out to Diane Martel, who was our introduction to Mariah. And yeah, I started dancing with her 1991, and I became her official choreographer in 1993. And I worked with her until my last gig with her was 2001. We did the VH1 Fashion Awards. And after that, I was, no longer connected. Although her last tour after that next tour, they were still using my choreography. So, but yeah, we worked as a crew. We worked with Mariah for for about 13 years. Again, shout out to Diane Martel. Diane Martel is the director of the music video Dream Lover. She's who directed 2 documentaries featuring us, House of Trey and Wreck and Shop. She's responsible for a few different projects that featured us. It was her focus of trying to, get people to understand how great we were. And I got to give her, her props, her flowers for that. When she talked about hip hop and house culture, she kept that focus, these are the people you need to, focus on if you want to understand what's, this nightlife and this culture. These are the people that I found when I got there that were, these are the what you would call the influencers. That's what they call influencers now. That's what we were. That's how she would describe us if this were happening now.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. How did you work with Mariah in the sense that, she has her own ideas and you guys have your own ideas as far as what the artist wants versus what the dance is true,
No, it's always what the artist wants. But if the artist, first of all, you have to convince the artist that what they want is in the best interest what you want. So with Mariah, she wanted to incorporate movement with her singing, and especially when she started to incorporate hip-hop sound into her records. She wanted the culture that went with that. And the beautiful thing about that is she was willing to dive deep into said culture, not try to change the culture to fit her, but her to fit into the culture. And so that made it simple. I had to just figure out what she was comfortable with movement-wise and then fit that and twist and use that to create something that she's comfortable doing, but it looks good, and we could do it with her to accent it, and it looks like, it all intertwines, it all interconnects seamlessly.
And was that a similar experience working with Michael?
With Michael, it's totally different. Michael, first of all, God bless the dead, Michael Jackson and John Singleton. Shout out to Fatima Robinson and Letitia Oliver, my partner in crime on Remember the Time. Michael wanted to do whatever we wanted to do. Literally, he wanted to do everything that he saw us do. He wanted to know the intricacies, the culture behind it, the reason we wore the clothes. Do you dance in those shoes? Do they enhance your movement? Are they too heavy?
It sounds very involved and curious.
Listen, man, he was an investigative reporter when we're doing that video. He asked so many questions. Day one, from the first day, he had a litany of questions, and I'm like, why is this dude asking me all of these questions? You're Michael Jackson. I should be asking you these questions. So it was totally different with him because it was brand new to him, and he just wanted to absorb and learn more and incorporate stuff.
So like, does that mean you had creative freedom to?
Yeah, we had complete creative freedom. John Singleton came up with the concept of ancient Egypt, or as we as Black folks know it as Kemet. And Michael was all for that. And we had the freedom to come up with whatever. And me starting as a popper and a b-boy, tutting is, one of the first things that I did. So applying that to this video was like, peanut butter and jelly. It was easy, and then I just went wild with, ideas. And, I had Fatima and Tish to help cultivate those ideas and connect them with other ideas that Fatima had. And we came up with this magical choreography that's, forever etched in stone like the pyramids.
Did you ever get to hang out with Michael like off the outside of the work hours?
Not at all. We were trying to convince him because he wanted to know about, how we danced in a club. He had no idea about that, and like a hip hop club or hip hop battles, and he didn't know what. So he was really like wanting to understand, and we were telling him there was a club that my boy, shout out to Legendary from the Soul Brothers, they had told us about, these parties that they have in LA, and then this one particular party we were going to. So we were trying to convince him to come, to put on a hoodie and a baseball cap and some Timberlands and baggy jeans, put on a mask or whatever and come hang out. You don't even have to tell anybody you're coming. You just show up. No one in their right mind is going to be looking and thinking, oh, that's Michael Jackson. No one, unless you come in there with a bunch of bodyguards, and he was all for it. He was excited. And then after rehearsal, his management team and his security team talked him out of it.
Oh,
because they didn't believe that we wouldn't tell all the people that Michael's coming. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, as I said to him when we were having the conversation, just show up. You could sit down at a table and watch, or stand in the crowd or just to see the experience. No one has to know you're there. You don't have to let us know. You can come to rehearsal the next day and tell us. We don't even have to know that you're there. That's what we were trying to get done. But, they didn't have any faith in us as professionals to not let people know that Michael's coming, which, just whatever, stupid. It would have been one of the greatest things for him. It would have been a great story for us, but it'd have been greater for him because, like I said, we didn't need to know he was there. It was about his experience, not our experience with him. We were going to go to the club and just rock out.
Yeah.
And I just, let me not say we just wanted him to experience what that is. It's not like we were telling him, come jump in the cypher with us. Like, no. But that's how they were taking it. His management team and security team were like, it's a security nightmare and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, whatever. Y'all could have done it. You could have sent security in the club beforehand.
So like during your times working with these different artists, was there a moment where you're like, I've made it?
No, not once.
Not you, Michael?
To put it this way, after I did Michael, I thought it was all downhill from there. Because I'm like, it's never going to get any better than this. Like,
I guess
this is it. Like, everything else that we do after this is going to be, I'm going to think like, say, Mike, like, Michael level. This is like, hee-haw. But, I have to say that I was blessed because after Michael, I got to start working with Mariah and then to work with Will. And so that level never went down. With Will, it actually went up because I got to do an actual movie. And to be a part of putting the dance in a movie.
Wait, which movie was this?
Men in Black.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for me, it was just like after we did Michael Jackson, I felt like it's never going to be this good again. Like, this is it. This is the pinnacle. Everything after this is downhill. It's just going to be, a rap act here or another R&B act or a music video is just going to be like passe. is going to be regular shit. Like, I'm never going to do like somebody like Michael again, which was ridiculous on my part, because literally after we did Remember the Time, John Singleton was working with Janet, and she wanted us to come to, audition for what she was going to do, which was her next tour. But, we were off working with other artists by then. But for me, in my head, I was just like, it's never going to be this good. And then the very next year, I got to do Dream Level with Mariah, and it was just like, I had full control as the choreographer, and I'm in the studio with her. She's, giving me the music and, the recording process. And then I'm sitting with the director, and they're like, we're going to shoot here, do your thing, get who you want, and boom. And so it was like, okay, I got full control now.
Was that the video where I was in a hot air balloon and she almost flew off?
Yes. Yes, that's exactly that video. And we're dancing out in the field. It's the 30th anniversary of it actually this year, and she just did like a mini documentary of it. But yeah, and that next year we did that, and then we went on tour with her, which was her very first tour. And I'd been on tour with other artists before, but touring with Mariah was something totally different, because a normal tour, you're traveling Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, and you're performing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Mariah is like, we are performing, we're traveling on like Thursday. we have a show Friday and Saturday. Sunday we're going home, and we have the whole week off, and then we go to the next city. Like, it was never a regular tour. It was like special to us, because I'm like, wow, we're not, there's no tour bus. We're flying everywhere. So it was next level touring from especially from my standpoint.
What was she like when like during off hours, like when you guys are hanging out?
Listen, Mariah's, the funny thing is, people think Mariah's a diva and all this stuff. Mariah's ghetto. Mariah's ghetto. She's from the hood. She's from Long Island. Her father's family's from Venezuela. Her mother's white. She's hood. She's not this diva at all. She's very down to earth, and it's just, she makes a lot of money being who she is. But if you hang out with her, you'll find like she's just as goofy as anybody else. She has her, her own down home goofy side, like not this glamorous diva stuff that people think that they see on TV.
Yeah,
she's really a jokester. She likes, comedy and practical jokes. That was her thing.
Yeah, that's good to hear that she's
is her thing. Not was. She's still here.
Yeah, don't we go? Yeah, ChatGPT. Mariah Carey passed away.
Yeah, please ChatGPT, please.
So it's, with all your experiences, both like in the clubs, in the studio, on tour, what advice would you give someone like trying to make a career out of this? Like what moves did you say was like a really good move, and what things where you say like, yeah, I wish I did things differently?
First and foremost, what my dad taught me and my crew: your talent is secondary.
Okay.
Learn how to do business. Learn to commodify yourself. Your talent is your commodity. That's what you're trading. Put a value on that talent as you're commodifying it. You are the commodity that's being traded. Your talent, your specialty is that. And you have to look at that from a business standpoint first. Second, hone that talent. Don't think because you're good at one thing that's enough. Hone that talent till you know it backwards and forwards as good, if not better than anyone else. And 3, always understand that if you're trying to join the business, you got to do business to stay in business.
What does that mean?
You can't think that you're going to sit back and someone's going to come to you. That's not how it works. You got to be out there. You have to be in that, in the center of that to make that happen. People need to see you. People need to know you. People need to hear of you for them to understand that you are the commodity that they need. If they don't know you exist, how can they pay you?
Is there any more benefit to dancing for artists versus just teaching classes or doing battles? Like
Well, artists used to pay more, so there was that benefit. But for me, I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed when I stopped doing industry stuff and I started teaching. Teaching again is a responsibility, and the impetus is on you as a teacher and how well you teach. So for me, when I started teaching, especially when I started teaching abroad, it became, okay, I can do whatever I want. This is not about the artist. It's about me and how I interpret whatever music I'm doing, whatever music I'm bringing, whatever steps I want to do, whatever style. It's entirely from my brain and my heart and my perspective. And that to me was much better than having to do choreography for an artist, because it's about them. This is about me. This is about me sharing what I know. And for me, there's no better job than that. I get paid to be me. It's the best job in the world. But also, I always have to take into consideration, it's not about me. It's about the dance. It's about the music and the culture. I'm the conduit for that. I am not the end all be all, because there was dance, music, and culture before me, and there will be dance, music, and culture after me. So always have to take that that mindset into, don't make it about you. Let other people make it about you, but continue doing the work, and expanding on the work and growing the work as you grow.
Yeah, very, very good points. So as far as like finances and making gains, what's the fine line between keeping it real and selling out?
There's this little thing called integrity. If you have integrity, then there's no selling out, because you're not going to do things just for a check, just for a payment. I'm not going to get up and do a song and dance just because you're offering me some money. Like, I had someone just recently write me on Instagram about, making a video for their daughter's birthday, and they're going to pay me like $500. I blocked them.
You blocked it.
I blocked them.
Okay.
Who do you think you're writing to? Like, I'm here to do a song and dance for your daughter's birthday. I don't know you. I don't know your daughter. Why would I do a song and dance or even a congratulatory video for some people that I don't know?
Yeah,
then you're offering me some money to do it, like this is what I do for a living. Like, no. So block, delete, bye-bye.
Yeah, I think there's a whole company that specializes in that, where you can request whatever greeting or message you want.
I get that.
Yeah.
I'm not a part of that company. I don't own stock in that company. I don't have equity in that company. So why are you writing me and asking me to do that? Like, I care. Like, no, I'm not invested in that. If I were, it'd be a different conversation. But it isn't, and I'm not. So, no, I'm not selling out for whatever you want. I'm not going to, as they say, shuck and jive for a buck. That's not how this works.
Yeah, I hear that. What were some of your most memorable experiences you had personally or with a crew? Like any crew battles or any legendary moments that nobody knows about?
I can't even say like nobody knows about. Like, the things that we've done have always been done, in the presence of other people. I don't really think of them, those moments. There's so many moments in a career. I've been dancing now for 41 years. I've been professional for 37 of those 41 years. I've had great moments in the clubs. I've had great moments on stage. I've had great moments just, in conversation with people that I respect and admire. So I can't really put, a number on it. I can say that one of the greatest moments is teaching Michael hip-hop for this video. Another great moment the first meeting for shooting Men in Black. We're at a round table, and you have the director, the producer, you have industrial light and magic, you have makeup, you have hair, and all of these people have done movies and all this fantastic stuff. And I'm the last person there next to Will. And I'm like, hi, I'm a hip hop dancer. Like, I'm here to, I felt like so out of place and ridiculous because they're talking about all these like industrial light and magic. That's Jurassic Park and Jaws and, and Star Wars and, and this director directed this movie and that movie, and this producer's produced this movie and this television show, and they did hair and makeup for this one and that one. And hi, I'm a hip hop choreographer. I've done some hip hop, and then Will steps up and like he's being really, humble, but he's done this, that, and the third. And when I started, he's who I saw dance first, and blah blah. He ran through this whole thing, to like prop me up.
That's really cool of him.
And yeah, I was like, damn, like, thank you. Because I was like feeling like completely out of place. Because I'm like, damn, they pulling up their resumes. My resume doesn't stack in my mind. But in his mind, he was like, he's being modest. He's done this one and that one. And everybody's like, oh, wow. And I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I did do that. So, but that's what I mean. In my mind, I'm always trying not to make it about me. And in my mind, I'm always trying to do better than I did before. And looking at it like, yeah, I've done this body of work, but there's this whole other body of work that I want to do that I haven't done. And I'm not leaning on that body of work. I'm leaning on who and what I'm doing now. That's what counts. That gives me the voice, but that does not validate me. I validate me by what I'm doing now. So that's where my mind was. At that moment, yeah, I had a pretty good resume, but to me, it didn't stack up. But Will was like, hell no, we're not doing that. I'm going to validate you and state the case for you since you won't do it for yourself.
That's super cool to hear that.
Yeah, man. It was a beautiful moment. It made me, appreciate him for doing that because he didn't have to, and it showed the level of respect that he had for me that I didn't know, so it made me really, appreciate who he is and, what he does. And then it also made me think back to like, yeah, you've done a lot, you should be proud of that. Like, so it was a trip for me, and it was a moment that I never would forget.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. How can people best support you and support the culture?
Support the culture. If you support the culture, that's supporting me. And what I mean by support the culture is, if there's a particular music that you like, support that artist. If there's a particular studio that you like or a particular dancer or dance crew that you like, support what they're doing, share what they're doing. For me, that's the level of support. And it doesn't, like I said, it's not about me. If you share other people that I'm connected to, that's sharing me because I'm connected to them. So I will get something out of that indirectly. I don't need to get it directly. Like if you really love what I do, well, I appreciate it. Let's keep the communication going and growing. We'll connect with other people. I'll connect you with some people that I know. You can connect me with some people that and we network. For me, it always goes back to that that aspect of community.
Yeah, very well said. With like SpaceX being established now, do you ever like have thoughts about like I wish I was an astronaut like before?
Man, listen, I just in the interview I did yesterday for NBC, I said the same thing. I still want to go in space. I'm a Trekkie. I'm a Star Wars fanatic. I'm always, thinking about, like I caught myself the other day. um, I'm looking at a video that shows the different sizes of black holes. And I watched the whole video and then I thought about it. I was like, you just nerded the fuck out. Like, why are you watching a video on the sizes of black holes and thinking about looking at black holes that are, bigger than our galaxy, and then thinking about the theory that our entire universe is inside of one black hole? Like, who is nerding out like that, like you are, that dances or raps or whatever? And I'm thinking to myself, that boldly go where no man has gone before is still in the back of my head.
Yeah. I learned through Neil deGrasse Tyson that like the interesting about black holes is no matter which direction you're looking, it's always down. Like it's always down, and apparently the death by black hole is you get spaghettified.
You're gonna get pulled apart by the gravity.
Yeah.
And you forever. Like you're gonna get pulled apart, but you're never gonna break. You're just gonna expand around the event horizon like light.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked. But who knows? Maybe one day we'll get to because like there's actually this guy named I forgot his name. I think it's Yusaku. It's a common Japanese name, so I could be wrong. But he's this billionaire from Japan, and then he bought like the entire seat, all the seats available on the first trip to the moon. And did you hear about this?
Yeah, I didn't hear who did it, but I heard that someone bought out all of the
Yeah, but did you hear the next part where he bought it out with the intent of bringing artists with him?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, man, you should apply because he said so artists around the world were applying for seats, right? And he's gonna like bring them to the moon for free, because he's like, well, we've had the science in space, we had the military in space, but we never had artists in space. Yeah.
You know what? I'll pass. I'll let y'all take that maiden voyage to make sure that it works, because I've watched Apollo 13 and I've seen the, two shuttles, not make it back home.
Yeah.
And, props to Elon Musk and SpaceX and all the SpaceX, exploration companies. I'll wait till you perfect it.
Yeah.
And then, I'll, let's go to the moon. If they get it to the point where you can go to the moon, like I can fly to San Francisco from New York, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But until then, nah. I read comics. I came up with the Fantastic Four. I'm not trying to get hit with cosmic rays or have my ship, fall apart in space. I've seen Gravity. I've seen, what's his name? Matt Damon. He got stuck on Mars. Like,
Interstellar?
No, not Interstellar. I forgot the name of the movie. Well, I saw Interstellar too, but I'm talking about he was on a Mars mission and they left him there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I forgot the name of that movie.
I feel like Matt Damon is always getting stuck somewhere because, like, he's always the dude that gets stuck in like another planet or in the past. Like, he got stuck in ancient China,
right?
Trying to save China. I'm like, dude,
yeah, Saving Private Ryan. They had to get him. Yeah, I remember that.
I think that's his typecasting. Like, he's the dude that gets stuck in.
Yeah, so I'm like, when y'all get that together, where it's it's a regular thing, then yeah, I'm ready to go. But until then, especially for me, it's like when y'all get the whole warp drive thing together,
yeah,
and the kinks, and the teleporter. The teleporter is really, it's really important to me because getting on something and having to break the force of gravity, and G-force going all the way up. I don't think I really want to experience that. I'd rather you take apart my atoms and put them together somewhere else, even if it takes 16 hours. I don't feel that.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, like the warp drive requires a lot of energy, right? Like I don't know if you know, but there's a city nearby here, Livermore. Did you hear about the Livermore Science Lab?
No.
So you know what nuclear fission is, right?
Yes.
So fission is like when it's splitting atoms, right?
Right.
Like the atom bomb and so forth. And so it's very explosive, but fusion's when it combines together.
Right.
So at the Livermore lab nearby here, I think earlier this year was the first time they were able to fuse two atoms together.
Okay.
And then the key thing to all that is like prior to however they were doing. I'm obviously not a scientist, so I can't give you like the breakdown, but the general level,
Right.
Prior to how they were doing that is, it took more energy to cause the two atoms to come together and fuse than what they got out of it, right?
Right.
But this year was the first time that they got more energy than they put it back in.
Ah.
So for a split moment in time, like a fraction of a second, however like
that fusion produced.
that fusion produced enough power to power a city.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane to think about. So like, and I think fusion is how stars work, right?
Well, yeah, it's not fission, it's fusion.
Yeah.
And I mean, they've always talked about that, like nuclear fusion is the science behind Star Trek. They didn't use fission, they didn't, use explosions. It's the fusion of energies. See, I'm nerding out with what is it, dilithium crystals or whatever. But yeah, so it's great that they're getting there now. If they can, overcome the idea of faster than light travel and the mass problem, then they'll be good. Overcome the mass problem, and I'm gonna really nerd out now. Is they have to overcome the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. If they overcome those two things, then we're good to go.
Like I think the interesting thing about like being faster than light is once whatever space that is, right? It's like everything's dark because you're faster than light.
Yeah, you can't see anything.
Yeah, it's like where do you go from there?
Well, that's the thing. They're saying, if you can go faster than light, you're going to enter. You have to. That's why they're coming up with warping, because if you go faster than light, you can't see. So you have to traverse into another dimension where light is. The properties of light are different. That's where they get the idea for what, because if you're going faster than light, how do you see where you're going? How can you map something that you can't see, because you can't see anything without light?
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting, right?
Some form of light, either infrared or that's still light. So if you're going faster than that,
that's a good point, because even the light, like say if this room was a ship, if we're traveling faster than light, then we would travel faster than the light in this room.
Yeah.
That's not right to think about. Okay, so any shout outs you'd like to mention?
Shout out to my crew, Mob Top Universal. Shout out to Elite Force Crew, Dance Fusion, Breakfast Club. Shout out to all the people out there that support and live the culture. Shout out to Sandy and her husband at City Dance in San Francisco. Shout out to my boy Mikey and Bionic here in the Bay. Shout out to Dopey, Jardy, who no longer lives here. My man Wacko and his Whack Donuts. Shout out to Profo and his brother Los Twins. That they make me laugh with that. Shout out to my folks in LA. We're headed there next. Shout out to Jack and the people in Cupertino that brought us out here.
Jack and Jing, yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. And, I hope the people who watched this enjoyed it. And I hope you guys nerd out with us, just like we just did about, warp drive and faster than light travel.
Well said. And then final closing thoughts for listeners out there. What would you like to close out with?
I will close out with this, as I've said this in class and all over the world. The beauty of our culture, in particular hip hop and its cousin sister culture, house dance, is it's the opposite of politics. It brings people together instead of separating them. And if you move from the point of move away from the point of fear, you'll find what the actual F should stand for, which is freedom. if you're not afraid, you can be free. If you're afraid, you will never be free.
Well said. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Hope to have you back here in the future. You're always welcome here.
Thank you, man.